Come on. JD on the track.
Good morning. You're listening to IntellectualRadio.com. I'm your host, David L. Lowry Jr., and the show is Let the Truth Be Told. Folks, we got a couple of interesting conversations coming up today. One of the things that we're going to talk about is how the media and social media can control the mind and behavior of people. So if you ain't got nothing to do, call a friend and let them know. You're listening to IntellectualRadio.com. I'm your host, David L. Lowry Jr., and the show is Let the Truth Be Told. Let the truth be told. It'll change your mind and move your soul. Let's get busy in a second.
Down for me.
You always there to pick me up. You quenched my thirst when I was thirsty. I feel like Lord, Lord, peace have mercy. Man, homie, when I'm feeling lonely, cause it's the truth that shape and mold me. Truth be told, cause I'm married to it. If it ain't the truth, man, I don't wanna do it. Real love, be official. It bear forgiveness and it be sacrificial. I'm married to the truth.
I'm married to the truth.
I'm married to the truth.
Yeah, I'm married to the truth.
I'm married to the truth.
What? Come on.
I'm married to the truth.
And welcome back. You're listening to IntellectualRadio.com. I'm your host, David L. Lowry Jr., and the name of the show is Let the Truth Be Told. First, I want to give all praises to God and my Lord and Savior, Yahshua, for making it possible for me to be here. And I want to welcome all my first-time listeners and my regular listeners. And also, we want to give a shout-out to all those checking us out on Facebook Live today. So now, let's get started. The host with the most. She said I've been cleaning with you. Here's your special introduction. Miss Kim and
I didn't make one up, but hey, good morning, everyone. You know what? It's a good day. You're alive, you're up, and whatever was bringing you down this past week, you know what? Hey, check yourself out. You made it. So make sure you tune in today, and we'll be here every Saturday
at 10 o'clock.
At 10 o'clock, which is a really good time because 9 o'clock was too early.
So you can get up.
So
now.
I can get up and on the road, then we'll have to just Facebook Live remote. So I'm excited to talk about some of these topics today.
First, I want to start with Dr. King.
Okay.
Everybody has talked about it. I saw Jesse. I saw Father Flager down at the Lorraine Motel the other day on his assassination day. And I thought to myself that was fine and dandy. But a lot of people did not even understand the ideology of Dr. King.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of folks thought that Dr. King was this turn the other cheek type person.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. King really was a radical.
Mm-hmm.
And toward the end of his career, he started to find out that he had a bunch of snakes around him.
Mm-hmm.
And he started to react to them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I want to say this. After Dr. King's death, there was a void of leadership. A lot of leaders, came by the fly by night. Jesse, you got Al, you got all the older guys that jumped up into the scene. But all the time that they've been in their leadership position, Black people have truly regressed. We have went back to the plantation type thinking that was happening in the 50s when Black people fought so hard in the 60s to change that mindset. Kim, what do you think about that?
This was a topic that was also in my news feed. And it's a couple of things that I like to share whenever the topic of Dr. King and Black leadership of that era comes around. One is we have been psychologically pressured to believe that leadership is of the elder ilk.
Yes, yes.
And I think that one of the things that is missing when we celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. King is the intentional acknowledgement that this man had risen to a level of such a threat to the American government at the age of 39.
Well, he was assassinated at 39. And so
at 39.
The years before that, you know, Dr. King was basically a kid himself.
Absolutely.
But you know, that's why I say that the anointing of God was on him, because he was able to, at an early age, see the problems, and probably because his father was a pastor, they was a big activist in the community, but he was able to see all the terrible things that was happening to Black people. So I could imagine him as he was growing, the Spirit was growing in him, that he knew that his destiny was to try to do something to change the way Black people were being beaten, killed, and try to open some doors and open some minds.
And I think
to make some changes.
And I think that's the reality. You're talking about a young person who was living an experience and stepped out of his experience to lead people to fight against the oppressor. This was a young man, and like you mentioned, everybody didn't agree with King.
They did.
This illusion that we had this phantom Black unity that we need to get back to, you know, it's just a ridiculous concept, you know. And we were talking, and I recommend to anyone, if you can get a hold of on Netflix, it's a documentary called The Black Power Mixtape. Mm-hmm. And what the Black Power Mixtape did for me was put in a context not just the assassination of Dr. King. You're talking about the assassination of Malcolm. You're talking about the jailing of Angela. So you're talking about a period where people were just constantly being bombarded with these images of Black leadership being brutally assassinated within a 1 or 2 year period. And how does that control the mindset of future leaders?
And see, you're so correct with that, because when you had the guys like Bobby Seale, the Black Panther Party, and I have to say this, you had layers of Black people. You had the Black political leaders, the clergies who went out and they fought. You had political leaders who went out into the community, and you sat down and you talked with those Black young men in the street organizations. I mean, it was a total coming together of the minds. And see, everybody was respected to their own realm of what they were doing, and nobody was discounted. You know, the educated didn't discount the uneducated because they came back to help.
Right.
The pastors, they made sure that the flock was being fed because they needed the true word to come to them so they would fight. So it was a lot of pieces to this puzzle that was happening. You had Malcolm over here saying, F the white man because the white man is the devil. He wasn't lying because it was true. And then you had Martin over here saying, well, let's turn the other cheek. But then so many of the masses, yet they were separated, but they had the same ideology that Black people need to fight for freedom and justice and equality. And with that mindset was why we got to where we're at today. And alluding to the media thing, that's what the problem is with us. The masses of people make decisions and their behavior change because of what they see in the media, Kim. And what I saw the other day when I was looking at Reverend Jackson, and I was looking at Father Pfleger. And the first thing that I thought about was they should have been there, but they should have had some young leaders there to speak on the issues of today, because Jesse them cannot speak on the issues of today because they're so far removed from what's going on today. You can't take a civil rights activist from 50 years ago and then he lead a group of people 50 years later that he has no contact with, he doesn't understand. So he should have been, and we should have been looking at other Black leaders who weren't afraid. And I have to say who wasn't afraid, because when you become an activist, you put not only yourself at risk, but you put family members at risk. You know, the work, I've been doing this work for 20 years. And I've always been careful about the things I do and the things I say, because you can piss a lot of people off. Preferably, sometimes I really don't give a damn because God got me.
I think that the other thing, too, David, is we need our foundational leaders. We need the legacy people, because they have the information, the context from which this struggle sprang. And what happens is that without continuity and renewal of an effort, the government has a set of strategies that they use to monitor and control behavior. And a lot of times we think that money for mental health and money for these social programs are coming from some benevolent position. But if you take a look into like grants.gov and you look into some of these other funding sources, you'll see a lot of this population management grant money that matriculates to mental health services and some of these other resources that we identify at a community level are really being born out of a military a military intervention.
Now I'm when you said that a military intervention.
Yes.
See, we as Black people don't understand that our military has been disbanded. And let me say who the military
Our
was.
military
Our
or
military,
the United States military?
The Black militia military has been totally disbanded. And now the brothers of the struggle, the young Black men who was coming up in Chicago, the GDs, the Vice Lords, the Stones, the O'Rookins, all of these brothers in the street organizations. These organizations was created because of the simple fact that you see what's going on now. Police were not running into the Black community, killing Black people like they are killing them now, when all these street organizations was working together to protect the Black community. And so this government was smart, because in order to defeat a race, you have to defeat whoever protects them. In the Black communities back in the day, all the brothers from the street organization were protecting the people in the community. They were looking out for kids in the community with hot lunches. You know, they created a lot of programs that were stolen from them, like Maggie Daly stole the after-school program that was started by the GDs. You know, the lunch program that was started by the Black Panthers. That was our army, people. And so when we allowed this government to disband our army, and when we did not continue to train and teach them up, now they have become what you call the street gangs with no morality. They just kill anybody.
I want to bring you back for a second, Dave, because we're going way down. We're going way down. We're going way down. And, you know, one of the things that we definitely wanted to talk about today was that continuity and the fact that social media, and not just social media in the Facebook, Twitter realm, but media in general, has really taken the role of creating our culture. Really and I think that to your point, in identifying ways that we were able to find avenues to become self-sufficient at a time when we didn't really have a lot of choices. Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. I think that it is part of the system that our methods and mechanisms become part of this larger system where we no longer have control over it. And I think to your earlier point with respect to our elders being inefficient leaders, you know, I think that for one, you know, I think that the generation gaps are too far apart.
Yes,
there should be, you know, even as an individual, you know, we can't all have a wholesale effort to save the world, you know, but we can do what we can. And we used to talk about each one reach one. And really, you know, you should have someone within your circle that's no more than 10 years distance from you, because that's going to be your limit of relativity. You know,
Mhm.
even for myself, as I've come up working with youth and things like that, at this point, there's nothing I can do with a bunch of seventh graders. You know, I'm a woman of a certain age, but I'll take a 30-year-old who's trying to come up and do some things that I can pour into, or even at this point, I'll take a 40-year-old that is looking to do some things that I can pour into. And I also have to respect that they're going to have a different twist and they're going to have a different approach because they have some more access to maybe more modern means of mechanisms. But I want to talk about the reality that a lot of things that we talk about, and I call it the barbershop and beauty shop conversations, where we're talking about, oh, you know, this neighborhood is bad because, you know, there's tons of liquor stores, or you know, it's nothing for the kids to do, or you know, and we sort of make these casual connections about how our conditions play into the outcomes and what we see on the news. And I want to just confirm that that's a reality. You know, that's a reality. The fact that these conditions motivate a specific type of behavior is not coincidental. The reason that we have political science, it is the reason that we have public health degrees, it is the reason that we have avenues to affect behavior. And one of the things that we definitely want to bring home and talk about, and now we can transition, is the role that social media and all these media outlets are playing and conditioning us to constantly look for differences amongst each other.
And you're so correct, Kim. The police violence that we're experiencing right now, it's never going to stop. And the reason why I say it's never going to stop is because Black people, we have to understand this, that we're in a war. We're in a war for our very lives. We're in a war for our economics. We're in a war for our children. We're in a war to make sure they're educated.
But we don't have any weapons.
But
we've given up all of our weapons.
But the thing of it is, the most powerful weapon that any racial people can have is unity. That is the most powerful weapon.
My point.
The most powerful weapon that we can have is to be able to understand our situation. And that's what made the difference with Dr. King and Malcolm. They understood our situation, and they were not afraid to interject these ideas into younger people, because that's what it did. When I saw Dr. King speak when he was here, it opened something up in my mind to say, hey, you know what? As I get older, I want to be able to help people like that. I want to be able to pave the way for my children that's going to come along. And so we got out of that. We got out of the teachings. We allowed ourselves to become commodities. And so this situation that we're in has been a real devastating effect on our young people, because the media, like you say, I'm going to give you a perfect example. The young Stephon Clark young man who was killed, shot 8 times by the police officers at his grandmother's house, saying that they thought it was a gun. Well, a gun don't light up. It was a cell phone. And his brother, who had lost his baby brother and now he lost his older brother, was going through post-traumatic syndrome. Our community is a war zone. And this young man was basically losing some of his mind because of the death and what's going on around him. And he was acting sort of, erratic. He was trying to express himself, as I've lost my brother, and, these things that are happening to me psychologically, I'm not able to handle it, and then the media tried to make him look like he was a damn fool, and that he was just a Black man trying to gain attention because it was national TV. They started to look at ways to try to discredit the young man, Stephon Clark, who had been killed, to say, and this is what's sad with us Black people. We'll sit back and we'll let the media drop something out there like, okay, well, he didn't like Black women. So did that make this brother less of a Black man because he didn't like Black women? or was this as a young man that was his preference?
Well, I think that you made a very significant point when you talked about Dr. King and him being familiar with the Black condition. And I think that, one of the things personally for me is that being aware of the condition and being ashamed of the condition, leaders who were looking for services for their family members, whether it was a pastor who had an addicted kid, or a leader who had a wayward, niece or nephew, and so we have these stories and these situations in our own lives, and although we may have a voice, these are, we don't really identify with it. And so what happens is that one thing that erases leadership is government money. You can't serve two masters.
Exactly.
And so we have a lot of our legacy organizations who have been bought out by government grants to have the codicil that says you can't lobby. You can't influence public policy because you have this government grant. And I think that the other point that I want to make up is that I'll never say that Black people aren't doing anything, because I've been too blessed to meet too many soldiers on the battlefield,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that rhetoric is something that keeps people feeling hopeless. But I also think that, going back to the topic of how media really disbands us, everybody's looking for an angle to make themselves look like they're so elevated, or that they're so woke, or that they're so much more in tune with life than the next person. You judging this person because they wear wonder weave, and this person's better because they don't have a perm.
These are all distractions.
But they're all distractions.
They're all distractions.
Or you're blaming this mom because her kids aren't behaving in this way, or you're blaming dads because they're not absent. And and the reality is that these are all distractions.
It's this simple, and Black people, we have to understand this. We cannot continue to ask those who have enslaved us to free us. And what I mean by that is this. White folks are very intelligent, and they play a lot of mind games with you. That's just like if you get a job. They'll discriminate against you on the job, and they'll say, hold up now, you just can't take me to court yet. We got a set of rules called the EEOC that you have to follow to deal with me. Even though I know I'm doing all these things to you, there's still a way to deal with me. And yet, we as Black people, we try to follow those rules when the rules was never meant to actually help us, but to only deter us from trying to seek justice. So we really have to understand the animal that we're dealing with. And our minds have to get into a place where all the way we're living right now is really a falsehood. It really is, because we don't have a foundation. Black people, we don't get together. We don't do anything constructively to really make a big impact. Or we do some things, but the most important things that we need to do, we've left undone, and our children undone.
I don't believe in that type of rhetoric, because I think that, I know for me, there's a lot of people in my generation, a lot of people that I'm connected with, whether I've been connected with them over the past 10 years or within the last 5 years. So I know it's some strong soldiers on the ground. And I can tell you, in my travels, I've met some of the baddest brothers and sisters in the struggle who are doing phenomenal things. So I think that that's part of the rhetoric that we need to dial back. We need to stop putting out there that we're not connected and that we're not together.
Well, I think
that that's part of the problem.
But exactly.
I think that's part that. But I think that the role that we can play here is to stop spreading bullshit. I know Earl ain't here. He's going to be mad because I said that, I dropped the bomb. But I think that that's part of the problem, and I'll tell you like this, even and social media. If I see somebody constantly posting what they hate, what ain't gonna happen, I can't. Let me get it out. I can't interact with that. Now I'll watch your news feed self-destruct, but I'm not gonna buy into that, because my thought is this: why do you spend so much time talking about what you hate, but that's not concrete? That's not concrete. But I also think that if you have a spirit and an anointing to uplift people, then you have to speak life into that movement. Exactly. You don't speak death into something. You don't speak negativity into something. And I think that collectively we could probably fill this building from the bottom floor to the top floor with some movers and shakers. But what the issue is just what you did. It's spreading the falsehood that there's no unity. And I think that the reality that you brought up earlier is really more of the problem.
Let me say this now, since you said that.
We have these movements, but we have this rhetoric that is a continuous conversation, and the conversation is about around reparations, about what the government is not doing and what the government is doing, when the reality is that you made the point. The government is not going to free you from your condition. The government is not going to fund. The government is not going to fund the revolution. But when you write that grant and you get that 501c3 for your church, you just sold out. And I'm not saying don't feed your family, don't work, and don't do these things, but yeah.
And I want to go back to this fact. Black people, we do not have unity. One of the things that I was trying to do when I was the president of NAACP and I was working with Al Sharpton was get all the different organizations into one room. Mm-hmm. I was trying to get the NAACP together, National Action Network, the Urban League, all the other organizations, community organizations. I made an effort to try to get all of us in the same room. Now, we all pretty much similarity was trying to do the same thing. And all of us was individual organizations, but guess what? We never sat down in the same room and put our ideas together and start to address it from those issues that each one do what you do best.
Perfect segue.
But yet we're in the same place and in the same house. If you deal with one of us, you have to deal with all of us. That never happened. And I'm going to tell you why. It never happened because everybody got their own clique. Everybody say, just like you just said, there's a lot of dynamic young men and women that you've met. They're in their own certain clique. Just like people I know. We do a lot of stuff, we do this, but guess what? We still got our own clique. And this is for all of us out here, the first person that Black people we need to look at, I call it brushing your teeth in the morning. See, when you get up and brush your teeth in the morning, if you can't look in the mirror at yourself and be satisfied with that person, that's who you need to start with. Because see, I understand a lot of us is brushing our teeth in the morning time and we ain't looking at the person that's doing the brushing.
Perfect segue. So on April the 11th, I'm going to be hosting a live webinar. It's free to register. I'll put the information in the comments because a lot of people want to know, what do I do? Well, I'm a program developer. I've been organizing community-wide initiatives and efforts for about the past 8 years. And so,
good job, too.
And so what I found is that there's a common misconception that we all got to be on the same page. That's a lie. You want diversity at the table. You don't want everybody on the same page at the table. You want to be able to diversify your efforts. The problem is that people don't know how to negotiate partnerships. People get upset because I've heard this a million times, or they come to the table with their own agenda. Well, guess what? I can't work with you if you don't have your own agenda, because there's nothing that I can do to get you to work for me just to satisfy what I'm trying to do. You gotta come to the table and know what you're gonna get out of it. Whether you're a person, if you're volunteering personally, you need to know what you're gonna get out of it, and in a way that helps you grow personally in your personal life or in your career. If you're representing a small mom and pop organization, you need to know why you putting your organization on the table. If you represent a larger group, you need to know what you're doing. How does this collaboration help move you forward? And it's not rocket science, but it's not just a matter of whether you're naturally talented or not. So on April the 11th, when I do my webinar, I'm going to actually walk people through some very tangible steps, because one of the reasons, and I've worked with a few legacy groups and some consortiums of groups where they fall apart because they took the funding and they don't even know. And we get up in arms and we talk about losing resources in the communities, but what we don't talk about is that the resources are not effective. You have, and hey, listen, I don't care who's listening. I talk about CETA all the time, because CETA will help you pay your light bill. But my testimony is this: before I got started, I tried to get in a CETA program.
Did you get in?
I tried to get in the CETA program. They said they had a program for entrepreneurialism and you could go for 8 weeks and they help you do this, that. Man, they never even, the people never called me back.
But that's the whole thing.
But I'm just saying, that's an example of money being in a community, but because the person that's overseeing the money don't know a damn thing about the community and people,
the money is always reappropriated to somewhere else. The money is
always reappropriated.
And that's sad, because, Black people, we built this country. If the white folks came and took it from the Indians, and then they were so lazy that they didn't know or understand how to build because they were savages. And so they said, you know what? The creator, Black people are the creators. We got to get us a bunch of smart ones to get them over here to build this country. And that's exactly what they did. Now, this beast itself is a very intelligent beast, because now his ideology is, how do I control the masses? And the first way is to keep everybody fighting against each other.
Yeah.
And then they use the media as a weapon against us. They say, okay, well, let's look at this boy. He's going crazy. He's not acting up the norm. And let's talk about the Facebook. Facebook is a breeding ground. Social media is a breeding ground to create dissension amongst people.
Well, let's talk about Cambridge Analytica and the work that they do. And let me tell you, so you have people who are nowhere near as moneyed up as Cambridge.
Exactly.
Right? But I got people on my news feed who can create a whole hailstorm by posting a certain comment, and they'll have everybody going crazy. And so even on a lower level, we know how to manipulate behavior. The difference between smiling at somebody and frowning at somebody. But what we don't realize is that we spend so much time connected to our devices. And I think that the argument over whether social media is this or that, let that go. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. And I had this conversation several times. One time I was having a conversation with a friend, and we were talking about a mutual friend who was having cluster headaches. I'd be doggone if I didn't click on my Facebook and I saw, you can be in this study about cluster headaches. That's when I knew that they had the microphone flipped on, because this was not a Facebook conversation. I had not Googled this. This was me having a conversation on my cell phone. And so what we found when I looked into Cambridge Analytica and why are they part of this larger controversy and the reality of Russian influence and things of this nature, I think that because we're losing the 5 to 10 year connection between generations, we're losing the ability to pass down common sense.
Right.
Common sense outweighs any degree.
Educational sense.
And we can go
We can
dollars.
go
We can go
down
dollars for donuts, because I can tell you that because you had too many young people coming out of college with 4 and 8 year degrees, and you don't even know how to get a job.
Not only that, they come out and they're in debt, and they spending all that. They get a job making $30,000 a year, but they got $100,000
$1,000 a month.
You know what I'm saying?
And it's not even a student loan for the kid; it's a student loan for the parent. And I think that just leads to more the way social media creates these ideal goals where you have to have this, and this in order to not even be successful, to be human.
But you know what, Kim?
I
want to touch on that situation that you spoke about with the colleges, because I work with young people who've just got their degrees and they've incurred all this debt. But it was something that was disturbing to me. I met with a young man and he said, Mr. Lowry, I bought into the bullshit. And I said, what do you mean? He said, look.
Hey, Sandra.
I got a couple of degrees that I went to school for. And I was told that when I went to school and I got these degrees, there would be job opportunities waiting on me hand and fist. Now that I have degrees, the job opportunities that I was told I was going to get never materialized. So I bought into a bullshit dream. Now I got all this debt hanging over my head, and I got a $35,000 to $40,000 a year job, and I'm stuck.
And you're stuck. And the thing about it is that, years ago, I read a report that was put out by the Jane Addams Whole House. They do a lot of research on
the Whole House or the Whole House.
The Whole House. They do a lot of research. And this particular study was about racial disparities, and it talked about how it really got down to where the disparities started. And one of the things that the study found was that everybody's sort of born on equal footing with respect to your propensity to have any sort of mental illnesses or anything that really sort of is a barrier to you being all that you can be.
It all depends on what family you was born in.
No, it does not. It depends. And this is what I'm saying.
I threw that in there.
But this is what I'm saying. We all on even ground. We all start out the gate with a reasonable amount of health and strength. And so the reality is that the conditions and the conditioning is where the disparities begin. And I think that this goes back to what we're talking about with social media and the conditioning of how we acknowledge our culture, so that the only people who can have this conversation are people with multiple degrees, or do you understand
exactly.
what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so the people with the multiple degrees. But think about it like this: a person with multiple degrees been in school up until they're about 30 years old,
and they don't know shit.
You don't know shit. You don't even know the neighborhood you grew up in because you've been gone.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying that we don't need people with this education, but you cannot be disconnected from the people who stayed in the neighborhood, because the people who stayed in the neighborhood really know what's happening. And when we talk about culture and we talk about cultural competency, it's not this cookie cutter idea of a husband and a wife and 2.5 kids in a garage.
Exactly.
It's about really looking at what's actually happening. How do people actually relate? How does this area or this group of people really function? And I always see, one thing about me, I always got a testimony. I don't philosophize about nothing. I have a testimony, and my anointing is that I'm going to find out and I'm going to look and see why it's happening, because I believe that it's happening for a reason. I believe that whatever has been has been revealed to me, it's because I'm supposed to understand it and do something
let me
with
say
it.
this too. Social media has really been a destructive tool for families. And I have to say this because people are coming to the dinner table, texting each other, sitting right next to each other. Social media has started to have verbal communications dissipating. And I mean, you see it every day. Even check this out.
I don't agree with that.
I do. I have to say, because wherever you can go to a club after party, and you can look around the room and you see that bright light shining in everybody's face. People ain't getting out there dancing no more like they used to. Brothers ain't hitting on chicks like they used to. They ain't coming up talking because they're too busy texting. And I think that social media has created this ideology of it. This is the way. This is how we're supposed to do it.
I don't agree with that. I think that social media would. I think that generationally we receive social media in different ways. I think that for young people, I see them. The young people that I see are the same as young people of years ago. They're looking for acceptance. They're looking for validation. They're looking for leadership. And so what social media has done has allowed the generation above them to be more of an asshole. You understand what I'm saying?
And not only that too,
because now
out of shape.
Because now, whereas if you had a young person in your life or in your circle who was going through some things, you might, because you're in relation with them or you're in communication with them physically in physical proximity, you may be more inclined to have a conversation with this young person. But now, even as moving into the realm of being an elder, now we are making these advanced judgments. You understand what I'm saying? We're making these advanced judgments. Pick up the phone
and call me.
However, I do think that there's a benefit because, for example, I have a large family, and so I love everybody, and I love being able to see what people are doing on social media, and it helps me feel more connected. So when we do have these, once or twice a year get-togethers, now it's not like I haven't seen you in a year. It's awkward. It's like I can say, "Oh my God, how was your trip to New York?" Or "I saw you," and
because you was on Facebook, you look great. Or you was on Instagram,
right? And so I think that it's not the social media's platform that's the problem. It's the lack of common communication skills of the person before they even go to social media.
I have to agree with you.
And so I think that
the lack of communication.
So I think that, I think that the lack of communication is not the fault of the young people. It's our job to teach them. So if they can't communicate, it's our fault because we're not communicating with them. It's just like with a kid. If you take a kid and you put that kid in a life where nobody talks to this child, then that child is not going to have as many words, is not going to have the ability to conversate, versus the kid who is always being talked to, is always being drawn in the conversation and things of that nature. So I think that we have to. The point that I'm saying is that we look at all these symptoms and we blame the symptoms, but we're not really dealing with the source.
And I have to agree with you on that to a certain extent. Yeah. Now, I saw on a Facebook posting, I saw maybe like a 5-year-old child that was in the classroom, and she had a tantrum and she was tearing shit up. And the mom was sitting there saying, "Oh, you had a problem with the teacher." And this kid was, "Ah!" And somebody wrote a comment that, she needed to be disciplined. And then the mother, whoever this child was, wrote a comment saying, "Well, no, I don't see it that way. She's just having a small tantrum and blah, blah, blah." Well, I disagree with that. And the reason why I disagree with that is because the family structure on raising children has been thrown out of the window. At 5 years old and you having a tantrum, you're going to get an ass whooping. You're going to do what you were told. You're not going to tell me what you're going to want to do. If I'm feeding you and clothing you, you're going to follow the rules. And for a parent to sit back, and have a child 5 or 6, 7 and 8 years old that's so unruly, they can tell you what they're not going to do, that parent needs their ass whipped because they've been half raised.
So the parent need their ass whipped because they've been half raised. Go whip the grandma ass.
Well, you know what?
See, that's my point.
No, because let me say this. Grandma.
No, you
okay,
said
let me say this.
You said
okay,
it.
right.
You said the parent. You said the parent
right.
need their ass whooped
exactly.
because they wasn't raised. Where is grandma?
But see, grandma is 35 years old.
Grandma ain't 35.
Grandma ain't 35. Grandma 35 years old.
No,
and she's still wearing the tight skirt trying to catch. Come on.
Now,
it ain't now, wait a minute. Let's do this, Kim. Now listen to this. True.
I'm listening.
And all y'all out there understand the truth is.
Let it be told.
Remember the real grandmothers? The real grandmothers will whoop your ass. The real grandmothers would raise you. The real grandmothers back in the day that fed you and clothed you and taught you is gone. The new age grandmamas.
That's your generation's fault.
The new age grandmamas,
that's your
is doing the same thing that the kids is doing.
But let me just
got the blind leading the blind.
But let me just take you back. That's your generation's fault. And let me break it down for you. Okay, that's your generation's fault because your generation was responsible for carrying the big mama torch on through.
We were,
and I'm not talking about you personally and your.
But child, we were.
So your generation allowed my generation to look at old people like they was old and crazy. So we didn't pass.
That's because y'all didn't get enough ass whoopings.
Because, but here's the thing.
Get it up.
But don't make it seem like everybody grew up under some damn stick and rock.
No.
Because there was a level of respect and there was a level of wisdom that was inherent. Because, and let me break it down to you. Because we didn't have the get out the ghetto mentality. Your ass had to be right here because you couldn't go nowhere.
Because you couldn't go to Master's neighborhood.
You couldn't go live over in Beverly. You couldn't take your ass past 95th and Ashland. Exactly. So the community was full of people who congregated and who looked out for one another. And it wasn't just the onus of this one parent.
Well,
it wasn't, but let me explain, because I think that that's a very sensitive topic to me, because we zero in on this individual.
No, wait a minute. Let me say this on the whole. But let me say this. I was using that as an example.
I know you were.
To say that today's parents do not know how to be parents because they haven't been taught to be parents. But common sense would tell you, your common sense would tell you that if my child is unruly, if my child is doing this, your common sense ought to tell you, I got to nip this in the bud. And how do I deal with that?
But see, your educated senses say, you see what I'm saying? And see, that's the thing.
And that's the brainwashing. That's the brainwashing
now
that the white man has with the media.
Now we're on the same page.
That's the brainwashing that the white man has used with the media and other social organizations to get us to treat our children like they're adults and negotiate with them when their ass need to be beat and put in a corner somewhere.
Now, see, you over here talking. I don't listen.
Oh, I'm telling you.
The opinions of the host about child abuse are not the opinions of me.
Let me tell you something. Let me say something. To all y'all out there listening to this show, the opinions is real opinion, because if you don't chastise your child, you got what you got today. You got all these young people out here, man, that ain't never got a whooping. Oh, God. My mother raised me and my sisters to respect elders, not to lie, to go to school, to go to church. They instilled all those things in us, and we didn't do them. Guess what happened? We got an ass whooping for being disobedient. And that's what has killed the black community with our children, because they ain't been held accountable. So let me finish now.
So wait a minute.
Y'all generation didn't get no whooping.
Oh, I got 2, and that's all I need.
2.
Listen, I probably got some I don't remember.
2.
But let me just bring it back.
Let me say
Wait a minute.
Now, you said something about child abuse. You said something about child abuse. I was 12. My mother told me not to pitch pennies anymore. I defied her. She caught me the first time. I defied her, and I thought she wasn't looking. She was at work, and she drove up on me, and she caught me pitching pennies again. She said, "This is the last time that I'm going to tell you about gambling. I don't want you gambling because I don't want you to be like your daddy gambling." That woman took me to the house. And my sisters and them, because when one of us was going to get a whooping, all of us would be crying. They was crying and stuff. "Oh, honey boy." So they took me back to the back room and put about 5, 6 pairs of pants on me, shirts. And I mean, I can hardly walk in there to get my whooping. Mama said, "Take all them clothes off. And oh, by the way, when you come by that lamp, unplug that extension cord and bring it." I got a whooping with an extension cord, and I look like Kuti Kente on the back after my mama was done with me. I'll be 61 years old now, and I don't gamble to this day. And what I'm saying is that left an impression on me for a lifetime. It didn't kill me. It made me a man. It didn't make me crazy in the head. It made me respect my parents. It made me respect this society. And it gave me a clear understanding that when you do something out of the pocket, there's going to be consequences that you pay. That's what's missing. We have not let our children experience consequences for all the bullshit they've done. They've got away with it, and we're in a mess right now.
I still think that that's more of a direct result of the influence of institutionalized education, because
that's my point.
Because for one, you have to acknowledge that there's a school of thought that will take that scenario and equate it to some slave mentality. You don't gotta overtalk me on it. All you gotta do is hear me. All you gotta do is hear me. You gotta understand that there's gonna be some people that say, you know, that's because that's all that's how black people were treated. They were beat into submission. But I think that what is missing in that context, because I believe that I'm not gonna beat no kids, but I'm not getting ready to go into no battle with no 4, 5, 9, 10, 12, 13, 20-year-old either. You know, now
if you at that age, 4, 5, now till you leave my house, you're gonna follow the rules. So the moment I got 3 grown children.
But let me finish my comment.
Let me tell you this.
No, let me finish.
Don't finish what you said, I'm gonna tell you.
And I think that what's important is that even as we talk about these things, I think that what's missing from the conversation about Black life and Black culture is the context. And we single these individual things out as though they are the end all to be all, but we don't talk about them in context. You might say, "Oh, my mama beat the Black off my back," but you have to talk about it in context with everything else that was given to you.
Well,
you know, and that wasn't just your only method of discipline, because your mother was able to beat the Black off of you and give you that impression, not singly because she beat you, but because she took care of you, and because she talked to you, and because she raised you, and because she made limitations that kept you safe.
Those things were done out of love, because we were hard-headed. And that's my point. The Bible said, "You spare the rod, you spoil the child." That's the truth. Any children out here that lack discipline and they don't have any type of respect or no structure I'm not, have to be taught.
I'm not saying that anything that I'm not disagreeing with you at all. But the only thing I want to do is add to the conversation that there is a whole communal context that this type of love and life occurred in. And the minute that we remove these external conditions from the conversation, we'll never be able to move forward. Because you know what? I don't give a damn how much your mama beat you in the back. If you had one mama and your mother worked 8 to 10 hours a day, and then she had other kids to take care of, and your whole everywhere you went was nothing but garbage and just death and destruction, and it was appealing, and it was grabbing you, and it wasn't, and you didn't have a greater community of people who stood behind your mama in the way that she wanted to raise you. I'm sorry, the chances of you escaping that and not becoming a greater victim is very slim. So
basically, it takes a village to raise a child.
It absolutely does. And until we begin to acknowledge the role of the village, we got to really take a look at how we demonize these young parents.
It's not the point. It's not the point. And that's why I say we differ there. This is not the point of demonizing parents. Your common sense would tell you if your child is out of control, you need to whoop his ass. That's common sense.
But I'm just
wait a minute. Now,
my point is this. My point is this.
So,
and I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. My point is this.
That's the ideology that got us here.
But my point is this. My point is this. Scientifically speaking, because we live in a system that is tempered by some definite rules and regulations, whether you agree with them, disagree with them, we can debate about the origins of this system or not. But the matter of fact is this: if it's a Chevy and it got a big block, it don't matter how you feel about big block.
Let me say this.
But so
I'm gonna answer the question.
But I didn't ask the question yet.
But no, I'm gonna answer some questions for those who might be out there wondering the type of parent that I am. So I'm going to answer the question. I got 3 grown children. They got degrees. They lived in my house as long as they wanted to. I didn't have all that problem because you know why? I disciplined them. I taught them. I helped them get educated. I did what a father was supposed to do to their children to make them good adults. They're good adults now. Nobody's perfect, but they're going to jail. They got their own kids that they raising, and they passing down the traditions and values that they learn. That's what makes them good adults. That's what's missing. And those children who want to say, well, you know, I'm like this because I didn't get this. Part of that is true, but your common sense and your surroundings should kick in, if you have any, to make you think differently and act differently. That's my point.
I'm not even debating that. Like, I think that's a given. Like, I think that what you're saying is a given. But I think that in a context, starts at home. But I think in the context of people who may be listening, right? Because everybody's not going to have that experience. But that doesn't mean that that person didn't do the best that they could. And I think that it's very common that when we have the discussion about Black life and Black communities and Black families, that we tend to focus on, one, we blame the individual efforts of the parent, and hear me out. Then we say there's no unity. Then we say there's no this. And I think that all of those things play a role. But what I want to say is that they don't independently play a role.
Not at all.
They play a role in concert. And so, you know, one of the things that I've been able to do over the course of my career is I've been able to go into some neighborhoods, and I've been able to go into neighborhoods where I could talk to probably 60% of the actual people who live there. And you get such a wide variety of insight from, especially in communities where it was a new Black settlement or it was a transition from an all-white community, and it slowly transitioned to an all-Black community. And you talk to people who were the first integrators, and you listen to their attitudes and how they felt about coming into this community. They moved their families out here because of all the amenities and the resources that were local. And I'll say this is probably representative of your generation.
Yep,
or a little bit older. And so you really found this attitude of arrogance. You know, I live out here. I bought my property. I don't have to do shit the neighborhood tells me to do. I own this. Well, okay. So then they came. They didn't want to contribute anything to the maintenance and upkeep and the going on in the community, you know, and then you have the white people who stayed. and they're of your generation.
That
But that group of people, they've been there for generations, and their conversation was, oh my God, yes, I remember when my mom was volunteering and she was a Cub Scout leader, or my dad would volunteer and we'd have the parade. And when you listen to them, this was not because they got government grants to do stuff. It was because they
invested into each other.
Listen. This theory that all white people got money and all this juice and stuff, these were some poor white folks. But hear me out. So now when we have the conversation, and this was our original point about how social media divides us and how we are constantly looking for the angle that puts us in the best. Like, oh, I raised my kids and I did this and they're this and that. And you're just a shitty parent because you didn't do this and your 4-year-old is falling on the floor. Come on, really? You understand what I'm saying? But my point is this.
Well taken.
When we have these conversations, how is that attitude gonna put you in a position? Let me get it. Because see, now you're too old to talk to some 20-year-old about their kid. You need to reach that grandma.
It's
you
too
see
late.
What I'm saying? It's never too late.
No. It's never too late. Let me say this. If you don't train a child between the ages, if you don't get that child and you start investing and creating a foundation when they can start understanding 5 and 6 years old, if you allow that child to do whatever it wants, cry, you baby it and all of that, that's the same type of adult that you're going to get that's always going to be crying, whining, and begging and on bullshit. That's just the bottom. Let me say.
I'm
listening to you. Okay?
Okay.
That's just the bottom line of the type of child that you're going to have. Look at the Mendez brothers who killed their parents out there in California for money. They had everything in life, but yet their greed and disrespect for their parents made them kill them. And so that type of mentality has been transferred into the Black community, where we don't discipline our children. We always look for ways to appease them and to kiss their ass. This is a bottom line. If you are a kid, stay in a kid's place.
Well, let me finish.
I'm gonna finish. Stay in a kid's place.
If you're an adult,
and understand your role as a kid. No kids should be talking to any grown person and acting like they grown. No kid should be arguing back at their parent, telling them what they ain't gonna do. No parent. And if you're a parent and you kissing your kid's ass and you telling them to do this and do that and they don't do it, then you need your ass whooped because you have raised. That's just the bottom line. Because when you raise a kid and is disciplined and got some sense and taught something, 9 times out of 10, that kid is going to go on and do what they're supposed to do out of love, respect, and fear. If they're in your house, if they got those 3 things, they're going to do what they're supposed to do. But if you don't have those, then you got what you got out here today. That's what the real deal is. And it starts at home.
I think that there's nothing wrong with what you're saying. I think that but I think that there are some child raising things that are just foundationally true. You have to love and discipline. And discipline is love. But I also think that we can't just throw out an entire generation, because the reality is this: the same way you talk about that how a child is raised is how they will be. So at some point the cycle has to be broken. And so my point is this: when I look out and I see what a lot of people may say is chaos or just rebellion, I think that at a certain point, if you can acknowledge from your own words that okay, so the millennials, the 20 to 30 year old.
Wait. Forget the name, the millennium.
Well, I want to
say the children.
I want to identify the generation.
F all of that labeling somebody else a millennium.
This is how old people be.
Okay. But
that's you don't want to listen. You don't want to listen. And that's my point.
That's the miscommunication.
The
millenniums. Y'all ain't no millenniums. Y'all damn children that didn't get no ass whoopings, and that's what you need. And you need to be taught how to be parents. It ain't you. All the X generation. No,
Now,
the millennium.
see what I'm saying?
Y'all just kids that is
See what I'm
unruly.
saying? So now, because I used a catchphrase, now my whole conversation is devalued. My point is this. My point is this. Sometimes you can't have a conversation with a person who might potentially have some actual wisdom and some knowledge to share with you because they so busy beating you up.
That's not the point.
That is the point. That is the
Let
point.
me say this.
The point of the conversation.
Oh God, here we go.
The point of the conversation. The point of the conversation was cultural competency.
Now let me tell you.
No. Because I'm saying something.
Okay, go say.
The point of the conversation is cultural competency, and cultural competency is not about trying to figure out why a person went wrong or what they did. It's about acknowledging what it is.
Now check this out.
And no, I'm not done. It's about acknowledging what it is and starting from there. People get sick of being preached to. We want solutions.
Now here's a solution.
So the solution.
I'm gonna give you a solution. I'm gonna give you a solution right now. At least 4 to 5 times a month, I go back to my old neighborhood at 5618 South Carpenter in Inglewood. You say Inglewood, and a lot of these houses, they grow scared to even go past 63rd. I go back into my community, and I mentor the young men there. I get out and walk around and sit down with these brothers and sisters and start talking to them. And getting I'm right there with them. I'm not chastising them. If I need to chastise them, I will chastise them.
But you're using this platform
but at the same time, I'm educating them and listening to what they do. If a young man say, "Hey, Mr. I have a perfect example. I had a young man one Saturday come over. I was at the house on 56 in Compton. He came up to me and he was asking me, he said, "Big homie, how did you get out of the game? You always come back home. You always giving us stuff. You always doing this. What did you do to get out the game?" I said, "First of all, I wanted more than something just to sit around. Then I took some ideas from my parents to start a business." He walked over to me. I walked to his car. He had a suitcase full of money. He said, "Man, tell me what I can do with this to get him out of the game." Now, I pulled that brother to the side. I gave him some information on what he could do. That young man started his own business. He bought buildings. I mean, very successful. I didn't see this kid after I told him that Saturday. I said, "You go down there to the clerk's office and start buying up taxes and all, building on taxes and all like that," right? He did exactly what I instructed him to do.
Perfect.
But now, check it out.
Let me pause you right there because that is perfect.
10 years later.
To me, and I just want to say that's a perfect example of what can be done.
Exactly.
And so I think that when we talk about the role of media and we talk about how we shape behaviors, you have a voice. And so when you use that voice and say, "This is what I'm doing right now," then that's how you get people involved in doing other things. But trust and believe me, that same rhetoric about who need their ass whooped.
They do.
But no.
You need to be held accountable.
But understand, you got people who will take that and run with that. And only have that. That's why I say context is important.
Well.
And so let me just say, on that note, then you run in a Trump type of rhetoric. Do you see what I'm saying? So whereas
No.
I said it. I ain't gonna be invited.
I do not.
Watch it, Earl.
I do
Watch
not.
It, Earl. You gonna be saying what happened to Kim?
No. I'm not buying that. We're not gonna buy that. Because children, let me say this. You children out there who are parents, when you were kids and your parent allowed you to do all the bullshit, you know the bullshit wasn't no good. You did it anyway because the state said you could do it and society said you could do it. If you don't raise your children and you teach them the way you've been taught, then that's the problem. You're the problem. And so you have to address the issue of what it really is. You just got a bunch of undisciplined, unlistening children out there because they haven't had to. They haven't had to be held accountable because they've gotten everything they wanted. They've said everything they wanted to say. There's no more Miss Davises down the block that could tell your mom and daddy you did something and get an ass whooping. Now you got the Miss Davises on the block.
I've never seen a compliant, passive leader. You know what I'm saying? And so, and I'll tell you this, I speak for the wild children.
Yeah, I know. Do
you understand what I'm saying? I speak for the wild children.
Well,
because here's the thing. You know,
we should have whooped y'all some more.
I was blessed.
We should have gave y'all more whoopings. Y'all should have got more whoopings.
I was blessed to come up in an intergenerational family. You know, my brothers and sisters are your age, but I think that what I want to say about the context is that I still have foundation, but I think that I was the one kid that was like, oh, I'm doing my own thing. I'm not really okay, I know that tradition is there and that's what y'all on, but I'm finna go over here and I'm gonna sow some wild oats and I'm gonna try some other things. And I think in that respect,
I'm gonna give you a perfect example.
No, okay, you can't give me a perfect example while I'm talking.
When you get through.
But I think that one of the things that happens is that as we struggle to hold on to tradition,
you have to have it.
But follow me. I think that foundation and tradition are two different things.
Okay.
And let me just say this, because what I see, and this is something that I used to do, I would go out and I would speak when they first started the women's resource centers and they had all of these welfare to work programs where people had to take these classes and things. And I would go and I would do a presentation. And I remember doing presentations for this one group that was more of, they had the group for women. And so the presentation that I would do is I would have these women talk about things that they like to do at home and in the hood. Hold up. And what I would do is connect things that they thought were insignificant and explain to them what the value in the corporate world was. For example, I had us to say, you know, I just really like to shop. You know, I just like to, and I put her on it. But I said, you know, stores like, at the time it wasn't Macy's, it was Carson's and Marshall Fields, even Kmart. I said, you know, they have people who are corporate buyers and they buy the actual clothes and things like that. Other sister was like, oh, you know, I just help out at the church when it's time to do anything. But I gave you the story. I gave you your story time. I gave you your story time. Let me finish.
You keeping a lot of story time going.
And so my point is this. Sometimes we get so caught up in this fixed vision of what is valuable and what is deemed respectful. Like when I look at the way that the youth or this generation or whatever is a generation are having all these setbacks and repercussions, you know, I see an opportunity for a generation.
Excuses.
No, I see an opportunity for a generation to rebel against a system that's not serving them. That's not, and it's not their fault. We allowed the system to become deconstructed.
Well, you know,
period. It's not just the parents.
Let me say this. Everything starts at home. Because growing up, there was a lot of adversities that we faced that you guys never even saw. You know, we saw a lot of things. We did a lot of things. And we had the type of parents who taught us, who disciplined us, and they guided us through the forest so that we didn't get devoured, okay? And I have to agree with you. It all starts at home, because if more constructive things had been done on our part to put in place for your generation, we would be in a totally different situation right now today. And I have to apologize like I always do. We failed, but some of us didn't fail. And if you go back and you look at the history of Black people, and I say, white folks don't want our children to know their history, because if they knew their history, they wouldn't carry on and act the way they act. if they actually knew and saw dogs ripping, biting this chunks of meat out of people, if they actually saw, like I saw, no, let me finish.
Yeah, go ahead. Earl on charge us.
If they actually knew the real struggle that black people fought and died for, they wouldn't be doing all this crazy stuff.
And see, let me just say this.
They wouldn't be doing all this
but let me
crazy
just
stuff.
say this, because I think you're right. But I also think that if we knew the struggle of the kids that's coming up right now, do you understand what I'm saying? When I sit in a focus group with a group of 12 and 13-year-old girls who are telling me how they're being sexually harassed and solicited by grown men just trying to make it home from school. When I listen to young men tell me about stories of grown people threatening them with guns and creating this cycle of paranoia. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like these young people face a very real threat. And they don't have to be doing anything. And I think that the reality is that they are making adaptations to survive in the conditions that they're in. And so when I listen to a generation talk about how well they prepared their children, is it successful because you prepared your kids to move out and your neighborhood where you grew up ain't never been on the upswing? Who's in charge of that? When I went to a ward meeting, I was the youngest person in there by 30 years.
Exactly.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
That's the point.
But my point is this: these people who were great preservers of integrity have no clue. They have no way of interacting and making sure that this community gets what it needs at this point, because they don't know what the community needs. They don't know any people in the community. And I think that when we start having these lofty discussions about how great this generation was, you name me one community that has been governed by people voted in, because we know seniors vote. These politicians ain't doing jack diddly. Tell me one black community that started from the bottom and is here. Every black community is going down and down and down and down. So this preserving of tradition, I challenge that notion.
Well,
I challenge it.
You could there's nothing wrong with the foundation.
Foundation and tradition is two different things. Foundation and tradition are two different things.
Let me rephrase that. Traditions. A man is responsible for himself. The traditions of a man is to go to work, take care of your family, do the things you need to do, raise your kids. The traditions of a woman is gone. Those values.
That's not our fault. That's the men's fault.
Yeah, but
oh, here we go. Oh, y'all.
I ain't blaming nobody. I am not blaming nobody. All I'm saying,
he don't want to start with that. Go ahead.
All I'm saying
Go
is
ahead,
this.
King. Go ahead, King.
All I'm saying
Break
is
it
this.
down. Mm-hmm.
The values of black people, especially black men and women, is at an all-time low. It really is. Because our women doing ungodly things just to be doing them. There's no respect.
Who we doing them with?
But I can remember.
Who the women doing them with?
I can remember back in the day, and I know this might not resonate well with some of y'all
those
women.
hearts going. Yeah.
I can remember back in the day.
Wait a minute. What's the number to call in? Because I think you got some people who want to talk to you.
708-223-8953. 708-223-8953. I can remember back in the day when brothers.
Why you say the number so fast?
Brothers wasn't getting no sex. Okay. brothers back in the day, you wasn't getting no sex every day, and women wasn't running around just throwing it on you like they doing it now. Okay, because you had to sit around, you had to date, you had to be a girlfriend, you had to hold hands, and you might get a grind after 6 months.
Stop it.
Now women just throwing them legs over for anybody that's got a quarter, anybody that's got a dime.
See, even Earl said, "Now y'all got to stop now. Y'all, we may have to take this live conversation on the road.
We're gonna have to revisit this. Traditions and values that have fallen away
Traditions and values are two different things. Hey, Veronica.
We gotta wrap it up. This is a great conversation, and these conversations are mean to make you think. I'm not bashing people. I'm just saying think about what we're talking about and implement it into your everyday living or do it.
Carry on these conversations at home.
But anyway, Kim, your last words, because we got to get out of here.
Next week, I think that we should really get into this because I'm going to say it's a lot of broke back brothers out here.
And there's a lot of broke back sisters out here, baby, too.
But the thing is this, the man can't say he the man and then say it's the sister's fault. It's the man's fault. If you want to be the king and you want to be in charge,
and I agree.
Then you got to run the kingdom. But don't come with me.
But check this out.
I'm not finna manage you.
And in saying that, as a king, a queen must know her place in that king's life. She got to know her place.
Listen,
and in saying that,
it's been a real good weekend. I know you can't wait till next week.
Yes.
You can leave your comments under here. Next
week,
time we'll make sure
we tag you in. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about relationships next week, and we're going to put some stuff out there. But in the meantime, next week we're also going to be at 95th at Woodson
Library.
Woodson Library. We'll be hosting I'll be doing a seminar there regarding medical, Medicaid, Medicare, those type of health things.
Yeah, you need to know what's covered. You need to know how to get the best of your cover. Let's get these babies taken care of properly.
But go ahead, get your last words.
So April 11th, I'll post a link. I'll actually be doing a webinar about program development and building collaborations and building outcomes so we can get this money, so we can leverage our resources. I'll be with Dave this coming Saturday at Woodson Library. We are definitely going to get it in. This is going to be a good season.
My last words is this: I love being black and I love my people. We've gotten so far off track as far as building our own communities, being self-sufficient. One of the things that I'm going to say is the solution. Until black people really get in the same room, we need to start talking. We need to start dialoguing. We need to start investing money into our community. The educated ones, invest your time. If you ain't got no money, give back some time. But we need to start talking and dialoguing about the things we need to do to move forward. God first. God bless y'all. We'll see y'all next week. You're listening to IntellectualRadio.com. I'm your host, David L. Lowry Jr. And the show is Let the Truth Be Told. Let the truth be told. It'll change your mind and move your soul. God bless you and peace.
Man, I'm glad that I'm vested without your love.